welcome! We're doing an update on my Warhammer addiction. I think that's what we can call it. So about 7 months ago, according to this, I put up a video called This is Getting Slightly Out of Hand. This was kind of, well, it was a few months into quarantine lockdown here in the UK, and I discovered a new hobby, and that was Warhammer. It was something that, if you haven't seen the video, click it. Is it there? It's there. I don't like when it flies in like that. In that video, I talked about how I began. Let's start with the Dark Souls board game, and then slowly but surely being turned towards the dark side that is Warhammer. And of course, an empty wallet. I think that just goes hand in hand with Warhammer, really. So, because we're coming up to the 1-year anniversary of lockdown in the UK, hey! And pretty much the 1-year anniversary of me painting Warhammer, I thought I would go over what I've done, what I've painted, what a whole year of painting Warhammer or collecting kind of looks like in the hobby. Yeah, my god, I have like 2 glass cabinets filled with Warhammer. Well, one's filled with Warhammer, the other one's filled with miscellaneous stuff and some armies that I bought. I bought them when I didn't really have too many models, and then I ended up buying too many, and now I don't think anybody has a need for 100 Necron warriors. So, last time we left off, I had just finished the Ghost Ark, which was a lovely, huge project that I had done in sub-assemblies, and that means, you know, I'd built separate bits and then painted them, and then at the end put them all together. And a very satisfying experience it was. I really enjoyed that. About this time, the Indomitors box came out, so me and my friend went halfers on it. And there was also some models in there that I thought maybe I would want 2 of. So in secret, I bought another box. It was a very stupid thing to do because a lot of it is basically unassembled and still in the box. So I could probably sell it, I suppose. And because Necrons, or I'd been painting Necrons for such a long time, it was easy, man. So I just like spray painted them all black, and then just got a cheap makeup brush, a lead belcher, and just dry brushed all of them. That kind of gave, you know, the recesses wouldn't catch the metal and stuff. So I ended up painting a lot. I did everything. I think I've completely finished a batch of warriors. I think they were all the Ghost Reaper, I think it is, which is the shorter shotgun version, which I think gives like -2 AP, but at a shorter range. And I don't know if I've ever seen them in like actual lists that work, because they're so short range, and Necron Warriors, well, I will see. They probably are. I'm probably just making stuff up, aren't I? Yes. So basically, before, to get the glowy effect on the weapons, you'd had to build up from different layers of greens, and then finally getting to yellow to give this almost like luminescent look to their weapons. But Games Workshop ended up coming out with this thing called Tesseract Glow, which, as long as it's shook up correctly and enough, you can just put on a white and it will do it for you. You know, the lightest bit, or as long as you dry brush kind of like black or grey to white, and you slop this on, you'll get a really cool effect. I ended up doing this to some Immortals with Ghost Flayers, or not Ghost Flayers, the Ghost Cannons or something, I can't remember what they're called. And I was getting better with color blending, because I did that for their blades on their weapons, which I'm probably showcasing now. Ooh, look at them, so pretty. And I did like 20 of those, so I was heavily going into Necrons. I think at this point as well, I'd had a few battle reports, and the Tesla carbines that the Immortals had, sorry. I don't know if I call them Immortals. That's what I meant, Immortals. The Tesla carbines, although give good, you know, output, if you didn't have the right sort of stratagems and stuff, they didn't do too much to like something with high armor. So that's why I wanted to go for something that just could do some AP, which is what those glowy guns do in the Necron army. Also, I started looking into older models, and I saw the Catan. And the Catan are these like god beings that the Necrons imprisoned. I mean, if you know about the lore, I'm not gonna bore you with that, and it's not really boring. If you like lore and mythos, look it up. It's so cool. Anyway, I love the look of the Deceiver, his golden look, so I wanted to replicate that. If I've got to be honest, it wasn't that hard to do. I don't know what paints I used. It was a lot of mixture of different golds and silvers and stuff. A lot of dry brushing. And just to get like in the crevices, I think I watered down some red, mixed it with some purple, and then just sort of like very carefully just pin washed into the crevices, and that sort of gave the look that I was kind of looking for. The only bit it kind of looks weird is down at the base when his like white sheet kind of goes into the orange of the Mars aesthetic that I was giving it. And So I spent loads of time on that one. And then the next day, I remember I was going to do a battle with my mate. And I was going to use the Nightbringer. That's the one who looks like death, edgelord himself. That one I spent like 2 seconds on. I was just like, black, dry brush, Ashen Grey, blue, or whatever it was. So I just did it super quick. So that's a model that I kind of want to spend a bit more time on. He's not the best looking, but I definitely didn't spend the most time on him, and I will admit that. And then I watched a battle report. I can't remember who it was, but they had a Destroyer Lord, and this thing seemed super cool or super tough, had a lot of damage output, and it has like some cool abilities you can put on it, so it can regain D3 more wounds, on the start of its turn. So what I ended up doing was I made my own. I kit bashed because I had a spare Overlord, and I took a Destroyer set and an Overlord set, and I just put them together. Kit bashing, that's what it is. You take 2 sets and put them together. And I gave him the sort of War Scythe that the Overlord had. And I put like the little D3 wound generator on his back, which is the little glowy orb thing. And I didn't want to make him green. I was like, he's like a Destroyer Lord. I gotta make him look different. So instead of silver, I painted him his parts gold, or at least in the engine bits. And instead of green, I thought, why not? Let's do blue. Let's go crazy. And that was loads of fun. I was really happy with the way he turned out. Again, I hadn't really mastered color blending, but I was definitely getting more of an understanding. At that time, I was like, okay, if you water it down and then you swipe towards a thing, and that is the basic principles. He looked good. I was very happy with him. And then with the rest of the Necron stuff, like the Scorpek Destroyers and the Scorpek Lord, the new Overlord that comes with the Tachyon Arrow and the Regenerator thing. I can't even remember what that thing's called, the big tripod thing. Everything just sort of stayed in its various forms of completion, and they are still that way. They're actually sat just over there looking at me, waiting. They've been waiting there for months at this point. And what I'd done, because I'd started, I thought, like, I've got a good army here of Necrons, and I can basically just switch out whatever I wanted. There's also some other models on the army I bought that I could just interchange with the command barge and stuff if I just want to put an Overlord on that, which I ended up using. Then I ended up looking into my next army. And when I was a kid, I'd got Tyranids, and I was like, yeah, definitely not touching Tyranids. I'm okay. My next army is gonna be the Tau. So I ended up buying, oh my god, I basically have a Games Workshop box. I have a store. I have a Games Workshop store in a box. Like, you can open that thing, and there is just so much. It's packed. There's probably like hundreds and hundreds of pounds worth of Warhammer. It's completely unopened because I went on, like, I was going through eBay or whatever, probably on their I think it was Element Games, not sponsored, but Element Games. Like, I just got those. Just like a kid in the candy shop. I was like, ooh, they look cool. I like that. Ooh, there's 3 of those. Yes. I'm not ashamed to say I did that. I am ashamed to say a lot of them aren't painted. So I was like, okay, Tau's gonna be my next army. They all came, and then something happened. As much as I liked the Tau, I ended up spray painting some Pathfinder squad. I ended up using some slate for the base and stuff, and it looked really cool. And then I started painting the areas black, and then painting where the armor was white. And I was like, I don't know if I have the skills to paint them, because I was going for the Velura. I think it's called Velura. That kind of paint scheme where it's white. And if you've ever painted with white acrylics, they are a absolute nightmare to paint with. I'm not anyone, you could probably vouch for me, acrylics or white or yellow or anything like that, those paints are horrible. Like, if they're too thin down, they go grainy. They're just not nice. And I wasn't using a medium, I was using just water to mix around in the palette and stuff. So I kind of left them like orcas. Like, they were black and white, and I was like, yeah, I don't know if I'm going to be able to paint these. Because their skill level's way beyond me. So I was on YouTube, and I was watching Midwinter Minis for some easy painting guides, and he did some Tyranids. He did some Gene Stealers, painting them up different color schemes. And one of them that he did was like the Xenomorph from Alien. And I looked at that, I was like, oh, how cool would it be to have like these huge monsters, but they look like, Alien, or they have the color scheme of Alien. And there was something so alluring about that. I was like, wow, I could paint them so quick, so easy. I think I'm gonna get some Tyranids. So I bought one box. I was like, because I already had a mountain of Tau. I bought one box of Gene Stealers, and I had some spares from when I was a kid, and I painted them up like the ones that Midwinter Minis painted, and I wanted the bases to be as if, because Tyranids, they liquefy everything into a goo, so I wanted to make like as if they're running through this, like the planet was just a thin layer of goop, and everything was pink and red and bony, and it was in the final stages of this world being completely stripped of all its life force or life whatever. But it didn't go too well. I wasn't too happy with the way they turned out. I remember having them on the stick and seeing them all like spray paint. I was like, yeah, these look sweet. And then when I painted them and I was finished with them, I was like, I don't like these. Sod this. Sod doing an easy paint scheme. I want to do a paint scheme that is a little bit, it takes a little bit of effort and skill. But at the same time, I could easily batch out like an army if I wanted to. Just like, assembly line. Just do all that one and then move on to the other one, do that, another one. So I don't know what the hell did I end up painting first? Yes, I think it was Hormigons. I bought a box of Hormigons because back in the day you could buy like Hormigons and Termagons. I bought like one box of each. And what I did was the same thing I'd done for the guns of the Necrons, building up from different greens to yellows. I was just going to do that on the Tyranids. And I painted their carapace or shells black, and I wanted them to be running through like a city or maybe an abandoned city. So there's a little bit of grass there. It wasn't completely like freshly destroyed. They turned out really good. I was really happy with them. I felt like this kind of paint scheme was pushing me more than the Necrons was. Because the Necrons, the Necrons are quite easy to paint, and I think they were a great foray into my first ever endeavors when it came to painting Warhammer. A little confidence builder, and that's why I chose them, because I didn't want to choose something like the Tau and paint something and for it to look awful in comparison to my expectations and then never touch anything again. That's why I started with Necrons. But I went on to paint the Termagons, the ones with the guns. And I think I did loads of flesh borers, a couple of devourers, because I was like, yeah, I might as well do some devourers, why not? They're the ones with the ice cream cone looking things, and fire maggots. And then I did the Gene Stealers, and this time I'd looked into strategy, like, an actual list. And I was like, okay, I just want them with rending claws. They're cheaper, and they, if you get roll of 6, you get -4 AP. And this led to one battle I did with my friend who they just, in first turn, because I was running Kraken, so they, you can move, and then advance. You can move, advance, and then charge. Add some mortal wounds. But in the first turn, I went first, straight into him. It was great. It was one side of the board, went wham, straight over to him, and he was really surprised. I think we ended up tying that game. The unfortunate thing is the Gene Stealers went up in cost when 9th edition came out, so they're kind of unused now. But from there, I ended up painting my first proper army with those Gene Stealers. Zoanthropes, sorry. These are the big brain bugs. They look so cool because the front of them kind of looks like alien because they have no eyes and they've kind of got the shell right there. And I'm sure that's the inspiration for them. Definitely xenomorphs. So that was the main part of my army was like 2 squads of Zoanthropes and 1 Eurothrope in the middle. I think I proxied my Catan shot because I didn't have it at the time. And just like firing off smites. And then after that, I painted some Hive Guard. I finished those ones. And another, I think I put Hive Guard and I put, what are those things called? Biovores, that's it. I really like the idea that Biovores could clog up the board just by firing, like deliberately missing. So you move them a little bit and fire, and then if they missed, you'd be able to place a spore mine and you could block the enemy off. So I ended up stupidly buying a bunch of Biovores, probably too many, and some extra spore mines, which if you buy like 6 or 7 Biovores, you do not need to buy spore mines. Really do not. So so I painted a bunch of those spore mines, and I never finished the Biovores. I got close, but I never put the finishing touches on them. But I mean, they looked okay. I was happy with them. Then I was still playing, some battles with Tyranids, some battles with Necrons, and so I don't know what it was called, but there was something in the Necron army, and I'll actually have a look at it. That's it. They're either Tomb Stalkers, Canoptic Tomb Stalkers, or Tomb Sentinels. I think think the only difference is one has like a better guns. And they're only Forge World kits, and Forge World kits are okay. So they're a bit hit and miss with the resin, because sometimes their casting can be a bit like, awful. And the fact is you have to use super glue instead of like plastic cement glue, which means that the bond doesn't stick as fast. There's more chance of it kind of breaking off. I ended up looking up a YouTube video on how to just make a Canoptic Tombstalker by kit bashing some wraiths, Canoptic wraiths. So I ended up making these two, and they look really good. I put some like terrain in there to make them look like they were, you know, climbing over stuff. I even magnetized them so I could put guns, or, you know, there's something else you could put on them as like a war gear to make them better. I remember back in the day, but not now. I haven't played Necrons in a long time. Spoilers. And so I kept on going with Tyranids, and from there I ended up painting Hive Tyrant. No, it is Hive Tyrant. I painted a Hive Tyrant, gave it wings, was like, heck yeah, that looks badass, I'm gonna give it wings. And painted all the different weapons for them as well, so like monstrous scythes, and magnetized his arms. So I was like, you know, I'm not gonna really, I do have another one in that box, but you know, I might not want to, and I can just like, they were easy to switch out, like their arms were always different. So a lot of times when it comes to Warhammer, they only give you like one piece. You know, like maybe it's like the base is a gun, but then you can put other guns on top of it. So you can only make one, really. And so I was like, well, these ones I can actually make, and then I can just magnetize. Bought some lictors, because lictors, as far as like playing the actual game, are really good. They can easily get like deploy scanners, I think it is. I think that's what it's called. Can't remember. Hive Tyrant was kind of like the biggest thing, or Swarmlord, I can't remember what it's called. Was the biggest thing I made, but I wanted to make something bigger. And because I had like a start collecting box, in there's a Tyragon, or Trigon, sorry. And I spent quite some time on this, and then I got some Uhu glue. But basically, you use this glue to make saliva because it's very tacky, and it takes ages to dry, and it'll just stick and leave these strands. It's a horrible glue to actually glue with. I remember that as a kid. But this so I put some blood for the blood god into it, mixed it up, put it on his teeth and stuff, and just made him look like he just devoured something. And I was really happy. The only problem with Uhu glue, you know, if it's a display piece, it's perfect because you're never really going to touch it. But if you're playing with these pieces, then kind of another story. You accidentally like pick it up a different way, snapped, and there you go. You lost your saliva strand. So there's a little bit of a shame in that it's not strong, but I mean, unless it's made of spider web, you know, and even then, it's not going to really ever be as strong as a plastic bit. You'll notice from here on out, in the last video, everything that I talk about, I'd finished and moved on to something else. Whereas here, this is when like the proper addiction started, when I was moving from one army to another. Anyone who plays Warhammer will attest to this. You know, got disinterested with something part way, and then they creative spark in another project, and they start doing that. So you're going to see, like with the Necrons, multiple unfinished things that got so far. But don't worry, the last thing for this video, I made sure to finish off last night. So yeah, the Gene Stealer Lord, or whatever he's called, Brood Lord, that's it. He's a boob lord. The Brood Lord. Painted him in the same kind of color scheme, but I never finished him. I think a lot of the times I got as close as I could to the battle of using him, and then once I had the battle report and whatnot, then I was like, I'm not going to use him again, so I'll just move on to the next things that are going to be the next battle. But at least for future, he's almost done. He's almost there. So when I come back to him, but oh yeah, I finished that, and you know, at least then I'm not forcing myself to paint something that I'm disinterested in, and I can come back to it and be like, oh, I've got this idea, I'll paint this better, or you know, I'll come back to it in the future when I have improved. And speaking of unfinished models, you thought the Necrons were bad. I painted like 16 Tyranid warriors. And they were basically just chaff, putting on some monstrous scythes or just whatever they come with, which is super cheap, super free. You know, they have like 4 wounds or 3 wounds, something ridiculous, super cheap. And they were just to clog up the board in the middle. So I have all of these warriors that have no arms, but then I have a bunch of arms downstairs or somewhere, and they're all just like, because they're all magnetized, they're all put together in a big clump. They look good, but at least the bodies are there. I think some of them were kind of off the bases because I had only lightly glued them on because I knew I wanted to take them off the bases to do the bases. But one squad I almost got finished was 2 exocrines. With the Hive Guard, with most of the Tyranids, I'd sort of painted like stripes on their carapaces as if like they're running forward, and it's kind of like, it's almost like gives them a speed look to them. Hive Guard, sorry. I wanted those ones too because they kind of sit still, they hide out where they don't get any line of sight, but they just fire and kill things. And I was very heavily inspired by the coconut crab. I think if anybody is into Warhammer or Tyranids has seen this video of this guy who paints these Tyranids like a coconut crab look, and they look so freaking good. So I was like, they look awesome. I want to take that and put that on my color scheme. So that's why the Hive Guard are the way they are. But I also, because the exocrine is kind of like this big thing that just sits at the back and fires, I wanted to have the same thing there. I don't think it worked as well. I'm not exactly sure what I did wrong, but I wasn't really happy with the result in their backs on their shells. But the skin I was really happy with. The heads I was really happy with. And the bio cannon was a mixture of purple wash, but I put loads of coats on it, so it's very shiny, so I can't wait to get some matte varnish to just dull that down. It's really shiny at the moment. And then I put some Nurgle rot around the front of the cannon, and to finally finish it off, to just give it that like goopiness, I will put some Uhu glue once I finish, but I put some Tesseract glow, the stuff that I do with the Necron's weapons that recently came out, and when that dried, the green sort of really went into the things, and the yellow, oh, it just looked gorgeous. So I have 2 of those. They're almost finished. Almost. I haven't done their bases or anything either. So I've got some plans for those bases. But at the moment, they're very low on the list to do. Because, I could put them just on a base, quickly just glue it down, and they're basically done. They're tournament ready. They've got more than 3 colors on them. And at this point, I still had not won a game of Warhammer. Not with the Necrons. Not with the Tyranids. The closest I got to winning was tying. And I would always be facing my friend who did Imperial Fist, and it just seemed like he would lay down a hell ton of firepower onto me. And I've got to admit, 80% of the time he would go first. And it was incredibly crucial to a lot of my stratagems to go first, especially with Tyranids. I feel like you get to go first. It's doing like that one time when I went first and my Gene Stealers went up the board, I tied. Very close. I tied that one. That was the closest I got to winning. So I wanted an army that had like, good firepower, good everything. And that I could make and, wouldn't take too long. So this is when I looked into Custodians. Which are the big golden boys of Warhammer. Basically, the Space Marines worship the Emperor. Emperor saved them, but the Custodians are better than Space Marines. You think Space Marines are good, Custodians are way better. Their armor saves on a 2+, so you're only failing on a 1. And their ballistic skills are 2+. Again, you're only failing on a 1. The paint scheme, if you just want to go for them regular, is just gold. You could just paint them gold, do a few little highlights, and you're all good. And the fact is, they're so expensive that you only need like 5 squads of something, and you've got a full like 1,000 to 2,000 point list. So what I did is I bought one of those what are they called? The bikes. I bought a set of bikes. One of them is still broken because it fell off, but I painted those guys, and I had so much fun painting those. It was so good. Again, everything's done with a brush at this point. I dry brushed, the gold. Then I watched a tutorial where you had to spray on some gloss to make sure that the wash Ryclon flesh or whatever it was that you put over the top would fall into all the crevices, and then do dry brushing of Golden Griffin, and then do all that, then paint the plume on the head red, do the boots brown, put any gems on, that sort of thing. And with the bikes, I put some extra details on the screens and buttons and stuff. I also painted up some, they're like Terminators, but they have flamer and some claws. They were Forge World kits. They weren't too bad actually to put together. I haven't done the bases on those guys, but at this point, when it came to blending colors, mastered it. I was like, yeah, I can easily do this. And it kind of really helped me because I would, on the wet palette, I would just put, dark color, mid color, light color, and then just mix them as I went. So, when it originally, I would just have 3 colors and I would just water down and work towards each one. So a lot of the times there would be a stark contrast between part of the color. But when I did it this way, I could easily say, okay, so in between that color is a little bit harsh. So I go my wet palette, find about where it was, get that bit of paint and then work it in. So there was very little, like, you know, slowly very watered down paint. It was literally just, no, that's that. Okay, and then that little bit of paint. So I ended up making, like, way faster color blends. And for me, it felt good. It felt good just to make something look that good. I was very happy with those guys. I also bought some guard, and they had these axes. And I wanted to just paint those axes a bit like power weapons, so there's lightning going through them. And also I want them to be a bit like the Tyranids. I want, like, you know, have a theme going through the Tyranids and the Custodians. Maybe they're fighting each other, so they're both in these destroyed cities. And I tried some bubbles in like a liquid goo. Maybe there was some leak of something, maybe pollution in this area. So I had a little bit of a play around with that. At this point, I had so much Warhammer, and I hadn't even touched the stuff, all of that Tau stuff. Felt like, you know, this was 9 months in. This was really foreign. I'd been painting Warhammer for about 9 months, and I'd gone from, you know, tentatively painting one Necron warrior, like, oh god, is this gonna work, to, you know, easy dry brushing, you know, the Tyranid, like, skin color, or, you know, color blending for the power weapons on the Custodians. And I felt like I'd gotten so far with it. I looked at my Tau Pathfinders and thought, if I'm gonna paint an army of Tau, I do not want to be brushing white ever. Don't want to be doing it. Don't, because it dries out really quickly on a brush. Can ruin brushes really quick. You know, you paint for a little bit and you'll wash it off in the water and it's already dried. So you're gonna have to spend a while just getting out of the brush. So I decided to invest in a airbrush. And when it comes to, I know, calm down, he's gone overboard. I had a little bit, I will admit, I didn't really look too much into airbrushes. On YouTube I went, best airbrushes. And I found Broadsword Gaming. And I'd been watching some of his stuff in the past, and he was using a Sparmax. Now, when it comes to airbrushes, Weta are supposed to be the best places to go to, the best one to go to for airbrushes. But this Sparmax, I saw what he did with it. I saw him clean it, or, you know, wash it and everything, and how to mix stuff, and I was like, you know what? I'm going to go with this. So I had a quick look on Amazon. I found one, and it came with its compressor, it came with a cleaning pot, it came with a sort of moisture buildup valve that you could get rid of. So I was like, okay, here we go. We're gonna airbrush. We're gonna do it. But before I decided to airbrush anything, I decided to paint or finish off my Pathfinder team the best that I could. And, you know, with the tools that I had. And so I used some watered down Reclon flesh or Agrix to try and get into the crevices of the Tau's armor, you know. But if you know the Games Workshop washers, Citadel washers, they, as soon as they go on, they stain. So there's no moving about with them, and you know, and they can kind of go wherever they want. And I did a tester with one of the Pathfinders. I was like, you know what, I sod it. Let's just see what happens if I just coat the entire thing in null oil. Let's give that a shot and try and rub it off. It was awful. It was awful. As soon as it went on, it stained. And I still got that to this day. I'm never going to paint this model because I want this to be a reminder of a change in my mind. At this point, I was like, okay, I would just put a base coat, then a wash, and then a highlight or whatever, and we're done. And that's what this Tau ended up looking like. That was my old mindset, even though my squad is now one man down, but hey ho. So I did the best of my abilities with these Tau. And then I was like, okay. And then I found this video, Paint on Plastics by Lincoln Wright, who's a dude who, he's like paints a lot of Gundams and stuff. But he did a tutorial on how to paint a ghost keel, a Tau ghost keel. And I've seen some of his stuff and it looks great. So I watched his videos intently. And you know, I've dabbled in using a sponge to get some rust effects and stuff, but I watched his videos and the level of polish that he was doing on these models was amazing. But I took a few of the sponge, you know, steps, and I put those onto the Tau Pathfinders, and it just instantly, as soon as I started dabbing that sponge onto those models, it gave them an age, it gave them a weight, it gave them a story. My story behind these Pathfinders is they're the expendables, you know, so a lot of the armor they wear have seen multiple Tau. You know, like, and they've died in those suits, and they can't be bothered to really, you know, spend more on making more Pathfinder suits, so they just pass it to the next one that they will inevitably die. You know what? I was really happy with those, but I knew going forward I needed a better paint scheme. So I looked at more of this, more videos by Lincoln Wright, and I followed intently this Ghost Keel. And he was using some paints that I'd never heard before, because most, you know, I used Vallejo Army Paint or War Paints. I sort of used some of those, but it's mainly Vallejo and Citadel Warhammer paints that I've been using. Let's talk about Citadel paints or Warhammer paints for a second. They're awful. The paint pots suck. Oh my god. If you're working from the pot, fine. But most of the time, I'm working from a wet palette, and you just want to put one dollop on, or even with an airbrush. Oh my god, if you've got an airbrush and you're working with Citadel paints in the pot, do yourself a favor. Just put them into the squirty bottles. Oh my god. So I bought a bunch of those bottles ready to do it. But anyway, he'd been using these MIG ones, and they're like Vallejo, but they come with an automatic shaker inside. And the paints themselves aren't expensive either. And I was like, what? This is next level. Or like I'd bought some ball bearings to put in my Citadel paints, but most of the time they just sit at the bottom and you can barely move them around. So to help with this, I actually bought this it's just like a vibrator thing, but it's supposed to shake. It's for lab equipment, and you're supposed to shake up I don't know what it's supposed to shake up, but shake up. And I'd seen that Midwinter Minis and some other painters had bought this thing, and it is so good. It's expensive, don't get me wrong, it's very expensive, but especially with Citadel paints that, you know, with the paint pot doesn't set, like if you've used a paint pot multiple times, you get paint around the rim and you can't close it properly. Nah, this thing is way better. Anyway, so back to this. He had, you know, Ammo by MIG has the ball bearings inside that you can shake up, and he'd also worked with enamel paints, this enamel wash, and some oil paints. And I was just watching these videos of him with these oil paints, thinking to myself, wow, like, he's getting really good results and a lot of working time. He would slop it on, which if you do with any wash, you know, Warhammer, you put that on, your working time is very limited and it will stain. You know, it goes on anything, you're very unlikely to be able to wash it off with water or anything. But this thing, he was going around the model, blotting on this enamel wash, and then getting some thinner, and then just moving it around. I was like, this is too easy, this can't be real. So I ended up buying the enamel modern wash. I was like, okay, I've got this, I've got my airbrush, and there was one model base coated black, and that was a Storm Surge. It had been sat for maybe 8 to 9 months when I first started, and I bought my Pathfinders and I spray painted them. I also painted, I got some bits for slate for the base and stuff, and I painted this Storm Surge, which is this Lord of War for the Tau, because I thought that was cool. It's a big mech thing. And I was like, you know what? I'm not going to bother cutting out a new model or whatever. I've got this. And the Storm Surge, by the way, costs like 100 quid. It's super expensive. So I wasn't going to waste it. I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it. I've got my airbrush, let's go. So I airbrushed him white, originally grey from the underside and stuff, and then started to spray some white from the top to give it like a, you know, when all the layers start going on, it's got a subtle colour change throughout. That's what I thought I'd base it with. And then I'd base coated any greys that I wanted on there. Use the Ammo by MIG black, which isn't the best. I've got to admit, it's kind of watery, and especially on a wet palette, it doesn't last 2 seconds before it starts to separate. So you don't need to water it down or anything, which is good, but it does separate. And it's kind of runny, especially if you water it down. And I've got to admit, it's not like Abaddon Black by Warhammer. Like, that black is black. Whereas the black by MIG is like a brown. It's a very, 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 very dark brown. And under a certain light, it doesn't look black. But it is basically black. It's not as black as Abaddon Black. Anyway, so I'd done all the base coats, and then it was on to the washing. And I actually tried a bit with the Pathfinders. I was like, why is this so easy? You put it on, and it instantly goes to all the crevices. Oh, it looks gorgeous. Don't even get me started on that. Like, you think, oh no, that's dried. Put that thinner on, bam, it's gone. Disappeared. And then you just move it around, and it'll just settle in all the crevices everywhere. And, you know, I'd start sponging on the rust and stuff. And then on the grey, I watched another tutorial by him on the grey to the white. I put the white on it. And then in bits where the white was a very big splodge, you put some more brown with a brush, you know, to make it look like not only has it chipped the paint, but it's chipped to the metal. And the metal's also rusted. So partway through doing this big storm surge, I ended up painting some drones. And they were the most satisfying thing I've ever painted so far. They looked so good when finished. They only took about 2 days to do. You know, and the color blending that I had perfected I just put on the lenses, going from black and then doing the rim and the white and stuff, and gorgeous. Those were my favorite things to do, and they fit perfectly on a toothpick. Just snip off the top and put them on a toothpick, and then spray. You're all ready to go. And from there, like, that had built my confidence even more to start painting the Storm Surge further. And now it was on to something that I hadn't done before with the airbrush, and that was painting. Spraying onto an already painted model. It's fine, you know, airbrush putting the primer on. You can be as sloppy as you want. But I wanted to put on the giant gun. I don't know what this thing is, what it's called. But it's a big one, that's why I wanted it. It has like a cavity underneath where it's shot, basically. It's shot, it's plasma charge or whatever. And it's cooling down like it's vents. And I wanted to spray blue onto that, like a blue glow. And it was very nerve-wracking. I made sure, like, you know, I was spraying, making sure I was getting the right consistency. I was moving from my hand to where it would be, sort of with the air just blowing, so I could get my accuracy right. A crag blue or whatever to a lighter blue, and then eventually finish with mixing some white in there. And the end result, I was very happy with. I was nervous because, you know, you mess up here. You know, I've already airbrushed the white on, you know, to get the kind of like gradient effect. If I spray over that, I can't recreate that. That's what it is. But you know, that's what it is. Paint bravely. In this hobby, you've just got to take risks. You don't get anywhere without pushing yourself. And in the end, after, you know, painting that, painting the dudes, because it's all sub-assemblies. I did the chest piece separate. I did the little pilot separately. But I was very happy actually painting the, you know, with the Pathfinder commander head or whatever he was, the Sashui or whatever he's called. You know, there was no airbrushing on his head. Sorry, dry brushing. It was just all going from lighter colors and the recesses, you know, building up from the recesses to the lighter colors to the highlights. Especially doing his little eye. He's got the tiniest bit of black, like, just like putting. You can get pens actually. They get like perfect. You can perfectly, you know, put a dot on. But I was like, no, I will do this. And all of the inscripture, all of the red sort of Tau lettering and stuff, I painted on the Storm Surge by hand. There was no transfers, neither on the Pathfinders. And because I had a nice brush, and I was like, you know what, I'm going to learn to do this. I want to get like a steady hand and just do this myself. Same with the drones, all just hand painted, no transfers. And then eventually, 2 days ago now, I suppose, I finished the Storm Surge, and for the base, I did some PVA glue and different grasses that I just stuck down, and I was so happy with it. So happy. I mean, there's definitely parts that can be improved, especially where the gun is. I think I could probably just put some over spray of blue onto the actual like body of the Storm Surge itself to make it look like it is glowing right there, rather than it glowing and then just not having any overspray onto the thing. You know, like no area of effect sort of glow. For my first time properly making a model using an airbrush, doing a glow effect with an airbrush, doing weathering, and properly doing rusting and stuff, I'm very happy with it. There's definitely areas I would improve, but this thing took me like 2 weeks. And, you know, I had a place, and I wasn't at a desk when I was painting all of this. I was just in the front room, sat on the side, or maybe, you know, on the arm of the chair with a table right there, just painting right with a wet palette. Just, you know, so I could socialize while I was painting. I don't want to be upstairs closed in my room all day, which I am now. You know, comparing that from my first model in a year. That's the thing, when you do stuff, you don't realize how much you're progressing until you look back. And you realize, whoa, I thought that was good. And eventually, you know, at some point in the future, I will look at this Storm Surge and I'll be like, I could do way better than that. Why did I put the rust effect there? It could have been running down that way, you know. It's a very rewarding hobby. I've come such a long way, I think. You know, took my own horn, but I think it's important that you celebrate your successes. Going from, you know, like I said, my first Necrons and my Dark Souls figures. I even still think the Winged Knight that I did is really good for what it was. That was like one of the first proper big things I ever painted. And I had no idea about color blending. I think it was just a happy accident. I got all that looking good. But that, you know, the Storm Surge was the epitome of, if I started with that Storm Surge on day one, my first thing I painted, I would have stopped. I would never have touched it. It would have turned out horrible. And I think I would have been very defeated. I feel I would have been very defeated. But, you know, it's took me a whole year to get here, basically. And I'm very happy with how that turned out. So, that's going to have to end the video. I don't know if I'll be making another Warhammer. I just felt like we've been a year. I feel like, you know, you've seen my journey so far. I made a first video on it. And I felt like I needed to complete that saga. That saga needed an ending. And I wanted to make sure that I finished this Storm Surge to get the thumbnail looking good. You know, day 1, day 3, 6, 4, 5. But anyway, guys, hope you've enjoyed the video. I know it's not dinosaur related. We'll get back to that eventually, don't worry. But I just wanted to get this out, done, while it's still, like, fresh in my brain. I was super excited to sort of bring you and show you what sort of progress I'd made and, you know, just generally share a passion with you. I think that's what YouTube is. You're just sharing your hobbies and passions with the rest of the world. That's how we come into it, isn't it? When our friend groups don't like it and then we come and find other people who are like, yeah, I like that, dude, yeah. Anyway, guys, if you enjoyed this video, I'll leave a like, and until next time, I'll see you cuties later. Oh, bye-bye.